Welcome back to Stab the Dragon Productions for episode number 240 as we continue our Canadian Whiskey Tournament Part 2. Coming to you from Fort Worth, Texas, where it is presently rainy and 41 degrees on January 23rd, 2026, as we await the Great Icepocalypse or Snowmageddon of 2026. Half the country is getting buried in snow, ice, and whatnot. We're getting our first rain since about October, and it's going to turn to freezing rain later tonight. Oh joy. A year ago, I did a Canadian blended whiskey tournament with the 5 most popular blends coming out of Canada: Crown Royal, Canadian Mist, Black Velvet, Seagram's BO, VO, and Canadian Club 1858. Canadian Club 1858 won that contest, but now here we are a year later, and I want to test the next level up of the Canadian blends. So we have looked at Seagram's VO Gold and VO Black. Gold, the 8-year, won that contest. And now I'm looking at Canadian Club, and we've already compared 1858 with the Canadian 100% Rye, and the Rye won handily. Today, I'll review the Canadian Club 9-year-old blended whiskey. Reserve. This is the reserve. Just the facts. This is an 80 proof whiskey, 9-year-old Canadian blended. It cost me $18.49 here in Fort Worth in 2026. Tasting notes. The taste is true to the nose with the corn, rye, maple, lots of oak, spice, tobacco, and leather. This is smooth, not much of a burn. It's got a short finish, but this is tasty, right in my wheelhouse. I gave it a score of 85, a letter grade for drinkability, a solid A. Recommendation. This is a tasty whiskey with great value for the low cost. It's very versatile and is a great whiskey at 80 proof for those who might be proof sensitive or beginners. But it also has a depth of flavor that keeps an experienced drinker interested. I highly recommend. Details. Hiram Walker was born in 1816 in Massachusetts and moved to Detroit in 1838, where he worked as a grocer. And if you've watched a lot of whiskey videos, you know that with the blended Scotch guys, at least there's a lot of grocers in Scotland who started blending whiskey. And so now Hiram Walker in Detroit is doing the same thing. As a grocer, he began by distilling his own vinegar, which led to distilling whiskey. He was also a grain merchant, and so he distributed grain to various flour mills. So he understood millwork and flour and distilling. He purchased a property across the Detroit River in Windsor, Ontario, along the railroad, and built a steam-powered flour mill and distillery, which began making whiskey in 1858. And one of the reasons he moved across the river into Canada is that Detroit, by that time, was beginning to practice an early form of prohibition. So his distillery interest in whiskey was not welcome there. Notice his proximity to 2 significant modes of transportation: the river, the Great Lakes, and a railroad. At the time, there was a form of prohibition, like I said, in Detroit, so you throw in the government aspect, and bingo, you've got an American founding a Canadian whiskey. So, Walker grew the plant so significantly over the years that he founded a model city for his employees at the mill and distillery, and it was called Walkerville. Walker's whiskey became very popular across Canada and spread into America, where he cleverly marketed it to exclusive clubs, hotels, and bars as a 5-year-old barrel-aged premium whiskey. Aging whiskey was not a general practice back then. They would put it in barrels and casks, oak, and the bourbon guys were using charred oak, but mainly for transport and storage. They weren't necessarily deliberately aging it. But Hiram Walker decided to deliberately age his longer. And because his whiskey became so popular in the clubs, it became known as the club whiskey. And it was so popular that, now this may be legend. This may not be truth. I've seen both sides of this argument, but here's the story. It became so popular that bourbon distillers in America complained to Congress, which then passed a bill requiring foreign whiskey imported into the country to label their whiskey with country of origin, specifically Canada. So is there documented proof of that? From what I've seen, probably not. But nonetheless, the story has been around for a long time. So Hiram Walker gladly complied and stamped his barrels with Canadian Club whiskey, and that didn't hurt his sales in the least. The name stuck. With Walker's death in 1899, the distillery passed on to his sons, and with the passing of the 18th Amendment and the beginning of Prohibition in America in January of 1920, Canadian Club engaged in a significant amount of smuggling or bootlegging, Al Capone being one of the biggest customers, allegedly. Through the years, Canadian Club has received not one, not two, not three, but 5 royal warrants by 5 different kings of England, or kings and queens, starting with Queen Victoria and going through to Queen Elizabeth II. They are the only distiller in North America to receive a royal warrant, and you'll see that on the bottle right there. In 1952, all the lights in Times Square of New York City were turned off so that the Canadian Club neon sign could be lit up and displayed, and it stayed there for 21 years. In the 1961 James Bond movie, Dr. No, Agent 007 allegedly drank Canadian Club. Today, Canadian Club is still very popular, still on some of the top 20 lists of best-selling whiskeys in America, showing up at number 20 on VinePair survey from 2022. 2019, the guys at the Whiskey Tribe presented a top 20 list from the IRI, which researches liquor sales, and Canadian Club was number 15 on that list. So in sum, Canadian used to be the top-selling brand in America, but now it's significantly lower, but it's still very popular. It's very easy to find in the liquor stores. Now, with this bottle, the history of this 9-year-old release, I can't find a specific date for it being released, but what I did find was several older reviews and advertisements for Canadian Club, and apparently this replaced a 10-year-old reserve maybe 10 years ago or so. So that's a possibility. So this may have been out for 9, 10, even 11 or 12 years ago. So for history, 4 out of 5 points. Bottle, label, and marketing. This bottle is the same basic bottle as all Canadian Clubs use, although sometimes, and I think the first bottle of this I got was a flask style, so sometimes you'll find it in a flask style. But otherwise, all the Canadian Clubs I'm seeing lately use this kind of bottle. It's clear glass, round, same diameter at the bottom as the shoulders. You've got a straight neck, plastic twist-off cap. The label is reasonably nice. You've got the royal warrant available there on the top, and some embossing on the bottle down here, and it says Canadian Club Whiskey 1858. And on the back, it's got 750 milliliters, and it's got Canadian Club again and CC. So, embossing's always nice. It's a nice touch. The label is, I like the color scheme. Black, gray, gold, white. It's an attractive label, I think. Not overly fancy, not gaudy. But I can't find any commercials or ads for this Reserve 9-year-old. And that's a shame because it is significantly superior, I think, to the 1858, the basic version. So for bottle, label, and marketing, 4 out of 5. Appearance of this whiskey. Well, in the bottle, it's reasonably dark. And in the glass, so that is about a 3 out of 5 for appearance. Composition. At the Canadian Club website, they claimed that this whiskey had a higher rye or greater rye influence than the 1858 edition. So that means it's maybe a slightly different recipe, more rye. Other than that, it does have the 9-year-old age statement. So I don't have a firm mash bill for this. And keep in mind also that Canada does allow for the adding of food coloring and even some flavor additives. So I don't know if it's my imagination. I tend to taste maple in a lot of Canadian whiskeys. Go figure. So 12 out of 15 for composition. All right, let's do the whiskey. To the nose. Corn, maybe some rye spice. Again, that maple sweetness. But I get some oak, maybe leather tobacco. Very pleasant nose. 8 out of 10 on the nose. So let's go in for the taste. The taste is true to the nose. You get the corn, rye, hints of that maple, some spiciness, lots of oak, tobacco, leather. This is right down the middle of my taste profile. I mean, this hits a home run for me. It does lean a little bit sweet, but within the bounds. Okay, so this is for me simply delicious. 22 out of 25 for taste. Mouthfeel, burn, and finish. This definitely has a richer mouthfeel than the 1858, which I'm out of, and so I can't really do a comparison. The mouthfeel is definitely thicker than the 1858. Probably close to the rye, maybe about the same as the rye whiskey was. There's not really a burn, heavy tingle, maybe a light burn, heavy tingle, but nothing going up, nothing going down. It kind of stays in the mouth. It's a very pleasant light burn or a tingle. The finish is not real long. Some of the tingles are lingering. The sweetness and the oak do linger a bit, but it's not a super long finish with any dramatic flavors going on. Nonetheless, for mouthfeel, burn, and finish, I'm going to say 12 out of 15. Now let's talk versatility. Neat. Clearly, this is a winner for me. This is, again, right in my profile. Ice. I don't normally do whiskeys on ice. If it's a super proof, like 115 proof or something like that, yeah, then I'll ice it. But I do use something like this as a mixer. And I've tried this, I think, in ginger ale, and it's good, and old fashioned, and it's good. So I may make an old fashioned here right now, just to see how this works. So let's pause and come back with an old fashioned. Okay, I am back with an old fashioned. And so I put the Canadian Club in there with some ice. I used some black walnut bitters. We'll see what that does. I tried this in an old fashioned the other day, and it really worked. And I always use maple syrup for my sweetener. And then I've got some orange peel in there and a Luxardo cherry. So here we go. And that absolutely works. I like the nuttiness of this walnut, black walnut bitters. So that perfectly balances out the old fashioned. So here we go. Canadian Club is very versatile, so 5 out of 5 for versatility. Price, value, and availability. Here in Fort Worth, Goody Goody has it for $18.49 for this 750. Specs did not have a 750, but for a 1.75, $27.23. Total Wine likewise did not have a 750. So for the 1.75, they had it for $25.99. But this was available at all three of the big box stores that I go to. So availability is great. The price is very good. And the value, I think, is fantastic. A lot of people criticize Canadian whiskeys. You talk about Canadian whiskeys in the whiskey community, you get laughed at. But bottom line for me is the taste. And this hits a home run for me. So price, high value, great availability, 10 out of 10. Bonus points, again, I really like this. The price is great, versatility is great, availability and flavor, 5 out of 5. Bonus points, giving me a total score of 85. A letter grade for drinkability, solid A. My analysis. This is a smooth, sweet, delightful, and versatile whiskey with that particular Canadian flavor that I really like. It is as bold and complex as bourbon? No, it's not. Bourbon and rye, American whiskeys in general, tend to have a stronger flavor, bolder, burn and all that. So this is smooth. It's delicious. It's got great value for the price. I think this is great whiskey for either a beginner who's afraid of higher proof or afraid of the burn, or for somebody like me who's got a lot of experience in drinking different whiskeys and it simply hits a home run with my palate. So there you go. This is a favorite. And if someone is interested in a quality whiskey that's inexpensive, here you go. I'm going to say try the Canadian Club 9-year-old. All right, what's next? Well, we have the snowpocalypse upon us. It's above freezing right now, but we're going to get freezing rain tonight. So I think tomorrow might be a good time, provided we still have power, to do a movie review of Call of the Wild. I've been reading the book again for about the third or fourth time. And a buddy and I got together last weekend and watched this movie. So I'm going to do a little movie review of this, and then maybe next week a book review of that classic book. And the weather is going to be perfect. The story's about a sled dog in Alaska, and we're going to have some of that Alaskan Canadian weather coming down, so why not? For now, this is Stab the Dragon Productions, out here.